Let's talk honestly, because this question crosses many minds but is rarely explored with clarity and self-respect. The truth is, what a man thinks after intimacy says less about your worth and more about his character, intentions, and emotional maturity. Instead of overanalyzing his thoughts, let's reframe the conversation in a way that empowers you. After intimacy, a man's thoughts are often a continuation of the mindset he had before the moment ever happened. If he approached you with genuine interest, curiosity about who you are, and a desire to build something meaningful, those feelings don't suddenly disappear. Instead, they tend to deepen. He may reflect on the connection, replay moments in his mind, and feel a stronger sense of closeness. On the other hand, if his focus was primarily physical from the start, his thoughts afterward are likely to remain in that same lane. This shift, or lack of it, can feel confusing, especially when expectations aren't clearly communicated, but it's rarely random. It's important to understand that people generally act in alignment with their intentions, not in contradiction to them. Someone who values emotional connection will naturally think about how you feel, what the experience meant for both of you, and what comes next. Someone who is driven by curiosity, ego, or temporary desire may feel satisfied in the moment and then mentally move on without much reflection. This difference is not created by anything you did or didn't do. It's rooted in who they are and what they wanted from the interaction. Overthinking his reaction can lead you down a path of self-doubt where you start questioning your attractiveness, your behavior, or whether you somehow changed things. In reality, the outcome was already set in motion long before intimacy occurred. The way he processes the experience is shaped by his emotional availability, his past experiences, and his personal values. Trying to decode his thoughts as a way to measure your worth only shifts the focus away from what truly matters. What deserves your attention is recognizing patterns and being honest about what you observe. If his energy, communication, or level of respect changes significantly afterward, that contrast reveals more about his original intentions than anything else. When you accept that his response is a reflection of his mindset rather than your value, you free yourself from unnecessary self-blame and gain a clearer perspective on whether his intentions align with what you genuinely want moving forward. Emotional maturity plays a defining role in how a man processes and responds after intimacy. For someone who is emotionally grounded, the experience doesn't end at the physical level. He recognizes that vulnerability was shared, whether spoken or unspoken, and that it carries a level of responsibility. His thoughts may naturally extend toward how you feel, whether you're comfortable, and how to maintain respect and connection afterward. This doesn't necessarily mean he is planning a future, but it does mean he is aware that intimacy involves more than just the moment itself. A man with emotional awareness tends to reflect rather than withdraw. He understands that communication matters, even if it's simple. Checking in, maintaining consistency, and showing basic consideration are not seen as obligations, but as natural extensions of his character. He doesn't disappear or become distant because he isn't confused about what just happened or what it meant to him. Even if his intentions are casual, he is more likely to handle the situation with clarity and honesty rather than avoidance. In contrast, emotional immaturity often shows up as detachment, inconsistency, or even sudden silence. This isn't always intentional harm. Sometimes it's a lack of capacity. He may not know how to process closeness, or he may avoid emotional responsibility altogether. Instead of reflecting, he distracts himself, distances himself, or behaves as though nothing significant occurred. This can leave you questioning the shift, especially if his behavior before intimacy felt engaged or attentive. It's easy to interpret this kind of response personally, but it's more accurate to see it as a limitation on his side. Emotional maturity isn't something that appears overnight, and it's not something you can inspire or fix through patience or understanding. People show you their level of depth through their actions, especially after moments that involve vulnerability. When someone lacks that depth, their behavior becomes inconsistent because they are not equipped to handle emotional continuity. Paying attention to how someone carries themselves after intimacy offers insight into their emotional framework. Consistency, respect, and communication signal a level of maturity, while avoidance and unpredictability point in the opposite direction. Recognizing this distinction helps you respond with clarity instead of confusion, allowing you to make decisions based on what is actually being shown rather than what you hope might develop over time. What truly matters after intimacy is not what he says in the moment, but how he shows up afterward. Words can be comforting, persuasive, and even convincing, especially when emotions are still heightened. A man might express how much he enjoyed the time, make future plans, or say things that sound reassuring, but without consistent action to support those words, they quickly lose meaning. Real clarity doesn't come from promises, it comes from patterns. Consistency is where intentions become visible. If he continues to communicate, makes time for you, and treats you with the same level of attention and respect as before, or even more, then his actions are aligned with genuine interest. There's no need to decode mixed signals when his behavior is steady. You won't feel confused or uncertain because consistency naturally creates a sense of security. It answers questions without you having to ask them repeatedly. On the other hand, inconsistency often reveals a different reality. If communication becomes irregular, if he reaches out only when it's convenient, or if his energy feels noticeably different, those shifts are not random. They are indicators of how he truly prioritizes the connection. It's common to hold on to the things he said and try to reconcile them with what he's doing. But when words and actions don't match, actions are always the more reliable source of truth. It's also important to notice effort. Effort is intentional. It shows that he values your presence enough to invest time and attention. This doesn't mean grand gestures or constant contact, but it does mean a clear, ongoing willingness to stay connected in a meaningful way. When effort is absent or inconsistent, it creates a cycle of uncertainty that often leads to overthinking and emotional exhaustion. Focusing on behavior rather than words allows you to stay grounded in reality. Instead of trying to interpret hidden meanings or waiting for things to change, you can observe what is actually happening. This shift in focus protects your peace because it removes the need to chase clarity. When you rely on consistent actions as your guide, you're able to make decisions that reflect your standards rather than being influenced by temporary emotions or empty reassurance. Not everyone experiences intimacy in the same way, and this difference can shape what a man thinks and feels afterward. For some, physical closeness naturally strengthens emotional attachment. They may feel more connected, more invested, and more aware of the bond that was created. Their thoughts might revolve around deepening the relationship, spending more time together, or understanding you on a deeper level. For others, intimacy can remain largely separate from emotional connection. They may enjoy the moment without attaching deeper meaning to it, and once it passes, their mindset returns to where it was before. This difference isn't necessarily about right or wrong. It's about how individuals are wired, shaped by their experiences, beliefs, and emotional capacity. Some people associate intimacy with vulnerability and connection, while others see it as an experience that doesn't automatically require emotional involvement. When these perspectives don't align, it can lead to confusion, especially if expectations were never clearly discussed. One of the most common challenges is assuming that the other person feels the same way you do. If you naturally attach emotion to intimacy, you may expect a similar response, and when that doesn't happen, it can feel like something went wrong. In reality, it may simply be a difference in how each of you processes the experience. This mismatch doesn't mean anyone is at fault, but it does highlight a gap in compatibility that can't be ignored. Understanding this helps you shift your focus from trying to change someone's response to recognizing whether it aligns with your needs. If you require emotional connection, consistency, and a sense of closeness after intimacy, being with someone who separates feelings from the experience will likely leave you feeling unfulfilled. On the other hand, If both people share a similar perspective, there's less confusion and more mutual understanding. Paying attention to how someone naturally responds without forcing or expecting them to feel differently gives you valuable insight. It allows you to assess whether the connection meets your emotional standards rather than trying to adapt to a dynamic that doesn't support what you truly want. It's easy to fall into the trap of measuring your worth based on how someone treats you after a vulnerable moment, but that approach will always leave you unsettled. Intimacy can create emotional openness, and when the response afterward feels distant, inconsistent, or unclear, the first instinct is often to look inward and question yourself. You might wonder if you said something wrong, did too much, or not enough. That internal questioning can slowly turn into self-doubt if you're not careful. Your value, however, is not something that increases or decreases based on someone else's reaction. It isn't dependent on how attentive they are the next day, how quickly they reply, or whether they choose to pursue something further. Those behaviors reflect their mindset, their priorities, and their emotional capacity, not your worth as a person. When you attach your self-esteem to external validation, you give other people the power to define how you feel about yourself, and that power can shift unpredictably. Moments of intimacy don't take anything away from you. They don't reduce your importance or change your character. You are the same person before and after with the same qualities, standards, and identity. The challenge is maintaining that awareness when emotions are involved, because it's natural to seek reassurance after sharing a personal experience. But reassurance should come from within first, not be dependent on someone else's behavior. When you ground yourself in your own sense of worth, you begin to view situations more clearly. Instead of asking why someone is pulling away or what you could have done differently, you start asking whether their behavior meets your expectations and aligns with your standards. This shift is subtle but powerful because it moves you out of a reactive mindset and into a position of self-respect. Protecting your self-worth also means recognizing when something doesn't feel right and allowing yourself to step back without overanalyzing. You don't need constant confirmation to validate your place in someone's life. If their actions create confusion or make you question yourself repeatedly, that in itself is information. Staying connected to your sense of value ensures that no matter how someone else responds, you remain steady, clear, and confident in who you are. The real shift happens when you stop centering your attention on his thoughts and start focusing on your own standards. After intimacy, it's common to become observant of his behavior, his tone, and any subtle changes, almost as if you're searching for answers. But constantly analyzing someone else puts you in a reactive position where your emotions depend on what they do next. That dynamic takes away your sense of control and replaces it with uncertainty. Standards change that completely. When you are clear about what you expect, respect, consistency, honesty, effort, you no longer need to guess where you stand. You simply observe whether those expectations are being met. If they are, the connection continues naturally. If they aren't, the answer becomes just as clear without needing long explanations or second guessing. This approach removes confusion because you're no longer trying to interpret mixed signals. You're evaluating actions against a standard you've already set. Having standards also requires discipline. It's not just about knowing what you want, but about being willing to walk away when those expectations aren't met. This is where many people struggle, because emotions can make it tempting to justify inconsistent behavior or hold on to potential instead of reality. However, standards only have value when they are upheld through action. Without that, they become ideas rather than boundaries. Another important part of this is understanding access. Not everyone deserves the same level of closeness, time, or energy from you. Intimacy is not just a physical experience. It's also about trust and emotional exposure. When you become more intentional about who you allow into that space, you naturally reduce situations where you're left questioning someone's intentions afterward. You begin to choose based on alignment rather than impulse. Focusing on your standards keeps you grounded in self-respect. It shifts the question from what is he thinking to is this right for me? That difference may seem small, but it changes the entire dynamic. Instead of waiting for someone else to define the direction of the connection, you take an active role in deciding whether it continues at all. At the end of the day, the question isn't just what a man thinks after he has slept with you. The deeper question is, what do you think about yourself afterward? Because when you stand firm in your self-worth, clarity replaces confusion, and you stop seeking answers in someone else's mind when everything you need is already within you.